This conference will now be recorded.
Gentlemen, y'all ready down there? Yes, sir. Y'all ready? I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening?
Staff doesn't, Mr. Chairman.
Anything? All right, what would you all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, public comment. Yes, ma'am. We'll get you to go to the microphone, and just kind of, yes, we're.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the proposed, Eleanor Montgomery from Malvern. I'm concerned about the proposed plans for development along Fishback Road. I understand this concern about protecting property rights, but I also know the welfare of those of us who live in Madison need to be protected. I think it's important for all officials of Madison County to be proactive rather than reactive. In other words, we need to look into the future to see how the ramifications of what we approve now will affect the future. It's imperative that you look at the existing infrastructure before approving developments, businesses, or houses. For instance, if high-density housing is permitted along Fishback Road, pardon my voice, have you considered the following things? Fishback Road is the main artery to Route 29 now and is not designed to handle the amount of traffic that would be generated by the residents of that housing development. Most likely, the Sheriff's Department would have to hire more deputies, which would cost the county more money if they can find the deputies. I assume the same thing would be true about EMS and the fire department. What about the burden of more children on the schools? Are the existing schools able to accommodate more children? Does the county have provisions for our aging population? Water is a precious resource. Has anyone looked into the adequate sources and proper processing? What about sewage? Several years ago, I attended a board meeting where there was discussion about the importance of increasing the size of the sewer plant. To my knowledge, that hasn't been done. Who will pay for the new sewer plant? The developer or the taxpayers? If the infrastructure cannot handle the new proposals, then be proactive rather than reactive. If you think high-density housing is needed, there must be proffers. Why not have the sewer plant as one of the proffers? Additionally, it won't suffice that the new developer sets aside a plot of land for schools. Check out the cost of building a new school. It's astounding. But then you have staff have staff and to maintain that building. Excuse me. All you have to do is look at our neighbor, Culpeper County. There is a huge development at the corner of routes 211 and 229. The county did not require the builder, who has made millions on that development, to construct a school. Now who has to pay for the school? The taxpayer. The added burden cannot be placed on those of us who live in Madison County. I know I'm repeating myself, but I urge you to be proactive rather than reactive. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, please.
Evening. My name's Yvonne Beatty. I'm a transplant to Madison.
having lived here for about a year and a half now. I live over on Oak Park Road. One of my concerns is, I'm speaking for the elderly and disabled elderly, about real estate tax. You're one of the few counties that does not offer some type of relief. And I'm not talking about deferment, but for elderly people that are living on a very fixed income. It's almost impossible. I thought I was moving here, for a rural county. I didn't want the big taxes. I moved from Fauquier and Culpeper, and now I'm here, and I can barely afford to live here. Right before Christmas, you hit us with a huge tax bill. My Christmas was nothing this year. I couldn't afford to give anything to my kids. So I'm speaking for the elderly, the senior citizens, about tax relief.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mitch Bernstein. I live in Graves Mill, and I've been part of the community there for 38 years. And I'm here to make a public comment on the proposed ordinance that was passed by you all at your last meeting regarding the consolidation of the Graves Mill voting precinct into the Wolftown voting precinct. And my comment right now is that if you're going to reverse very recent policy that was set, that's your prerogative, but I really believe it's premature. And if we go back, when I say the recent policy, 3 years ago, I stood at the same podium. 4 of you were up there. Mr. Buchanan wasn't, but Ms. Hoffman was. And it was unanimously decided to maintain the Graves Mill precinct based on public comments, including by Mr. Smith, Jim Smith, who's now on the electoral board, that it has great historical value. And at that time, there was a $10,000 issue about buying a spare machine and so on. It was unanimous by the board that the historical value was important, and it was overruled. Now we have a new context of doing it. It's the fact that the Wolftown precinct has to have a new voting facility, had to move from one church to another. Once again, kind of out of the blue, this notion came along to once again consolidate Graves Mill into Wolftown and just to abandon. I submit that the principle is the same, that historical value matters, and that possible is a $6,000 difference than what was voted on 3 years ago. One thing I think is important to recognize when I make this appeal to you all is that it was not recommended by the electoral board, despite what the draft ordinance says. It was researched and recommended it. Mr. Smith, at your last meeting, specifically disowned that and explained about, reiterated his comments from 3 years ago about the historical significance of the voting precinct in Graves Mill. Just outside, I met, for the first time, Mike Sharman, and I just happened to throw this out there, and he said, oh yeah, well, we didn't recommend it. And I met this morning with Ms. Eanes, because I wanted to get facts to present to you all. And she, again, volunteered. We're not recommending this. It's the board's decision. So I'm appealing to you all about this. But I wanted to clarify some information that I learned this morning from speaking to Ms. Eanes, and I'm not sure that it was clear from the public presentation. And she explained to me that the issue here is that in the near future, indeterminate near future, it's probably going to be required to replace the machines. It's throughout the county. This is not coming from Richmond. This is not a statewide edict that we have new technology as the last turnover or a recent turnover was involved. It came from the manufacturer saying and explaining to her, well, soon these machines will be approaching the end of their useful life. And at that point, we're going to need to, you're going to need, the county is going to need to replace and upgrade them. And that's not this cycle. It's not next year's cycle. It's probably 3 cycles away, and maybe 4 or 5, according to machines. We just don't know. So my question is, why are you doing this now? What's the urgency? Why can't, there's no cost. Yes, there's the staff cost, but, and the $200, rental. But why would you be wanting to walk away from the historical significance way before there's any significant fiscal impact from doing it or for doing it? And I just think, and 3 years from now, 5 years, however many years, there could be creative solutions. I mean, if you're buying new machines, I don't think you're donating the old ones. It's not going somewhere. You're still going to retain them. Maybe you can rotate them through. Use those. Have an inventory of 10 machines that Graves Mill can continue to use. But, okay, instead of taking away all the community, all the history, everything that was, I don't want to regurgitate everything from 3 years ago, but I think you all understand what I'm talking about. So I would like you to please, urgently, withdraw that part of the ordinance, which would, number one, change the whereas clause, because the electoral board did not recommend it. And just the second, ordain that the two shall be consolidated. If you just remove that, you accomplish the objective of getting Wolftown precinct, the existing Wolftown precinct, the new voting place that it needs, and you maintain the status quo until it becomes an issue, a fiscal issue. So I'd like you to consider that, and I appreciate the opportunity for the comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? No. Kevin's going, and then we'll go to you, Clint. Yes, sir. Kevin?
Good evening, gentlemen. Do I understand that we're going to do a public hearing on the speed cameras a little bit later?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll come back to that later. I just want to reiterate a point that one of the members of our audience pointed out a few minutes ago, and that is in regards to elderly tax relief. You guys know I've brought that in front of the board the last several years in a row. And I just want to point out that on the most recent tax assessment that was sent out to everybody, I've highlighted it here where it says a tax relief program for the elderly. It states that we have a tax relief program for the elderly, which we all know is not true. It's a tax deferment program, which is completely different. There's nobody, Williamsburg is the closest place in the state of Virginia that has a tax deferment instead of tax relief other than us. And I hope that we'll give consideration to that tax relief that I feel that the elderly deserve. And then I was just going to point out in terms of, obviously the hot topic is the new tax assessment, and I've been getting lots of phone calls as a realtor about that. And, it was inevitable that the tax rate or that the assessment was going to go way up. It's inevitable in the market that we've had. And I just want to say that I trust that you guys will make good decisions in terms of coming up with a tax rate that will make everything be as fair as it can be given our budget cycle. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Clint, please. They are, yes. We're glad to see you. And there is a big presentation on the tax assessments here shortly.
Yeah.
Please, Clint.
I'm Clint Hyde. I live over on Twyman's Mill Road. For those of you who don't know me, my ancestors are in fact the Twymans. They've been in this county for a damn long time, although I personally am kind of a new guy. We didn't know about that, lost history for a while. I came to speak to the tax assessment, just as Kevin did a moment ago, although I'm going to say something a little bit different. I brought this up on the Madison Bulletin Facebook page a couple of days ago, and there was a lot of comment traffic after that of people who had, like me, also received their reassessment valuation, and just amazed at the, let's call it price hike, the valuation number having gone up 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% over the last one, which is shown as 2024 on the forms that were sent out. And so I guess I'm kind of accidentally speaking for that lot of folks who were not happy about this. I was kind of hoping I was going to see more of them here tonight, but it was very last minute and we didn't get enough info out about when the meeting started and so forth. I do know that you have from the agenda a topic number 4 is a discussion about that. I'll be very interested in hearing. As Kevin said, the rate that you assign can mitigate what those hike cost, the valuation hike numbers are quite a bit. I had an interview, no, what do we call that? It was the reassessment appointment this afternoon. I walked in and I talked to the gal about this and got, very good explanation of what I mostly understood already about the process. It's difficult in a sparsely populated rural county like this to get good comparisons against other houses. This is not like where I used to live in Fairfax, where many neighborhoods are cookie cutter. Every house is like every other house, same size. Sometimes, like the neighborhood I lived in, there were 4 architectural floor plans for 250 houses. And you had A, B, C, D, and the mirror images of those things. So the houses were pretty much all worth the same amount. And because it was right outside DC, and the housing churn every year is significant. Many houses in the neighborhood would sell every year. And you could know from casually, just looking at the sale prices, what the apparent value of these properties actually is, because they're all pretty much exactly the same. And that would repeat for lots of other neighborhoods around the county where, we all like to have our house look different, but you buy what you can afford and you end up with a bunch of cookie-cutter things like that. So also from what happens in Fairfax County, and Clay, you might remember me saying this last go-around, that the difference in behavior there is that they do an assessment every single year. There's a lot more money in Fairfax, so they've got budget to have full-time staff to do that. And they do their own reassessment every year. Every year you get a new number, and it wiggles up and down just a little bit every single year. Some places, some areas go up better, larger amounts over time. My mother, after 30-plus years, we sold her house for triple what she paid for it. After 25 years, I sold my house for double what I paid for it. But I hadn't paid a whole lot in the beginning. And that county's housing average price is considerably more than what I sold mine for 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yes. Here, I find myself thinking, holy crap. I got this statement and it says, the value of my property is now assessed at 50% greater than what it was last year. And that is a dramatic increase. And what I referred to it previously as the way to work this is that you have to boil a frog. You do a couple of % every year as things are creeping up, not wait and punch people in the face with these huge valuation increases, unless, as Fairfax would occasionally do, if the valuations went up a lot, then their tax rate would drop to keep the balance even, so that the residents weren't suddenly finding themselves tax priced out of their homes because they couldn't afford to pay their real estate property taxes. And I'm concerned that we may be, with large valuation increases, might be doing that to ourselves here. And I would ask that we be thoughtful and mindful of the tax rate being equitable, and if the valuations have to go up, which they maybe will, there may be not an answer to say, oh no, we goofed and everything's off by 30% or something, but rather that the rate drop in order to balance against that so that we aren't killing our citizens, our residents here. Right? Used to hear that regularly elsewhere, discussions of the same thing. Over the past couple of days, a bunch of that on the Madison Bulletin Facebook discussion. I was surprised at how many comments there actually were. I expected to see a few, but there were dozens to hundreds talking about this. When's the meeting? When can we go? La, da, da, da. Man, my amount was this, my amount was that. So I would request that we be careful and not punish our residents for things beyond their control. One of the things that has happened in the past is decades ago, late 70s, California introduced what's called Proposition 13 to get rid of exactly this problem. Unfortunately, they screwed themselves up in the process of doing it because then they underdid what their tax receipts turned out to be. But it was the case that nobody was paying increase every year beyond what they could afford for reasons beyond anybody's control. So I would, please, let's be careful what we do here.
Thank you. Other public comment? Other public comment? We are doing a public hearing on the speed cameras, and then we also do public comment at the end again. So, got something. Anybody else? Anybody online? Francisco? Federico, sorry. No. All right, moving on. Consent agenda. We have supplemental appropriation number 17, which is use of the fund balance from the opioid funds. We've got number 18, which is animal shelter, the use of a donation, contingents for veterinary expenses. And then we've got number 19, which is FY24 capital rollover for the EMS station. Anybody have any questions or comments on these? Mr. Weekly, you have any comments on any of these?
I stand by, ready if the board has any questions on any of the supplementals.
Anybody?
They all seem pretty straightforward to me.
Yes.
So. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, special appearances. Mr. Daniels, come up and talk to us, please.
Good evening. Just give you a brief overview of the assessment or the reassessment as we wrap it up. Of course, you contracted Wingate Appraisal Services to conduct the reassessment. Field visits were made to all the properties. Sales study was done by them to evaluate the sales data of recent sales in Madison County and establish a methodology of applying the fair market value, the estimated fair market value to each parcel in the county. With that, we saw the real estate value go from 2.7 billion in the county to 4 billion. So obviously a very robust real estate, and that has been over a 6-year period. Our last reassessment was in 2019. The assessed value has stayed stagnant outside of somebody doing some new construction or a parcel division or something to that effect. Their assessed value has stayed static since 2019. So from 2019 to 2024, they've had the same assessed value. And of course, the board sets the tax rate to be applied to that. Again, I think they've done, a good job. So we're currently holding assessor appeals. They will run through March 5th. They do admit that it would be more ideal to advertise that, give a longer time period, but unfortunately they do have to wrap this up so that we can, the county can move on with the budget process. So it does meet state code, so that the advertisement requirements and the hearings that will hold are conforming to state code. We did discover properties in conservation easements. They were sent out corrected value notices. So we did discover that due to a system error, those did not get calculated correctly, and we've notified those property owners that they were mailed out today of the corrected notices. The appeals process, they have a property owner has the right to appeal to the assessors up until March 5th. They can have a phone appeal, so if they can't make it in, they can certainly do it over the phone. I encourage anybody that's interested in even discussing or trying to understand their assessed value better to make a phone call. Quick phone call can answer a lot of questions. They're very helpful. Of course, you can meet in person. There's an online form. So we have a general reassessment page on our website that I hope is very informative, and folks can get a lot of information there about the process. Of course, when that time period runs out, we have to wrap up the reassessment, and those values will be set. However, a landowner can appeal to the Board of Equalization up until the end of the year. So their time period for appealing their assessed value does not run out on March 5th. They still have another process. And of course, they can always go to the circuit court at any time period. After moving on with the budget process, there's an equalized rate that will be calculated. So that equalized rate has to be within 1% of the prior year's revenue that's generated. So you have to advertise that rate. Of course, it's up to the board if after evaluating the budget and revenue needed, you can advertise an increase above that equalized rate, but that equalized rate must be advertised to a public hearing to the public.
Which is a whole different process.
Correct. That is outside of what we're doing here.
Correct.
Right now, we're trying to establish fair market value in the reassessment numbers. Just some statistics that we have up there on the board. If you scroll down just a little bit, Kent, or back, or there's a chart that provides, and again, you can't view it very well there, but there was, that's 2018 to 2024. You see the real estate market has grown, and that's residential home sales, 83%, and that's by the Realtor Association. So again, real estate market has significantly rose over the last 6 years. I think most all people understand that.
I'm sorry, Brian, was that chart specifically Madison County?
I do believe. Yeah. The overall average increase was 50% on all real estate. And I broke it out into state land use classes. So we have residential, 43%, residential throughout the county at 57%, multifamily 43%, commercial 16%, large or 20 to 99 acre tracts of land. That can include a house and such on those, 45%, and then larger tracts, so 100 plus acres are 41%. So again, listening to some of the feedback that we've experienced here in the last few days, the value change notices that get sent out, state code requires us to put the prior 2 years of values on there. Possibly a better, more informative piece of information if we were allowed to put the last general reassessment, 2019, if we could put that value. And again, I'm not sure, I'd have to review more code to see if that's prohibited, and I don't think it is. And of course, so maybe that would have been better to have another line underneath of what's required saying, hey, this is what it was in 2019. And of course, we're happy to provide that to anybody who would like to see that. But again, hearing some of the feedback, I think that is a portion of the information that is very valuable. And most people that have inquired understand the process a little bit better when they understand that, hey, it's a 6-year gap. It's not a year over year, 50% increase. It's been over a 6-year period. Of course.
And the 6-year is the maximum allowed by state code.
So typically, it's cost prohibitive for us to conduct a general reassessment.
How much do we pay Wingate?
We pay them $300,000
There you go.
to conduct a reassessment. So that the county of our
Required by
size,
state law.
there's very little benefit to reassessing more often other than for the landowner to know the true fair market value. There's very little financial benefit for us to reassess. That's pretty much all I have. Is any questions?
But like Clay said, it's state required.
Right. The maximum we can run it out is 6 years.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, I've got 2 questions. I think the prior, I can't remember what it's labeled, but on our GIS, the prior amount is on there from 2019. I don't know whether it says 2019.
I believe
but-
it says 2024.
Oh, it does?
And
Okay, well, that is confusing, but that is the 2019 evaluation.
Right.
Because I went back through, and I saw all the traffic on Facebook and stuff, so I went back through my records at home, and my value has been the same since 2019, and our tax rate has been the same since 2020. It's been 74 cents for 5 years. It had not changed in 5 years. So you can find it on GIS. It just says, doesn't have the right date. And the other question I had the values that went out on the statements that were received, folks that have land and land use, is that the fair market value in the statement, or is that the land use value?
So there is a difference. At the bottom of the notice, we advertised the new land use rates, which were $900 for agricultural land,
So you
$500
have-
for forest land. But that is not calculated in that upper, it's the fair market value that's calculated out
Okay,
in the
good.
upper.
So you can just do the math to come up with your land use rate, which is what
And
you'll
we're
get
happy
taxed
to
on.
assist
Okay.
with that if somebody needs more details.
Got it.
It can be obtained through the web GIS. If you
Yeah.
look on the property card, you can see how it's broken down.
And I see now Vamanet is gone, but there is a replacement in place now.
Correct. You can access your prior year property card plus the new
Yeah.
assessment property card there.
It's got a lot more information.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. That's all I got. Mr.
Other
Chairman.
questions? By all means, let's go.
Couple of comments on this. This is always a traumatic experience every time reassessment is done. And just to reiterate some of the things that have been said and trafficked on social media this past week, I have an elderly neighbor who asked me today why their property taxes were going up 50%. My response was, your assessment went up 50%. Your taxes are not going up 50%. As you explained under state law, this board will have to set a new tax rate which will be much lower than the current one to attempt to equalize the actual amount that people pay. What most people probably don't remember is that for the last 4 years, we have had to work with the personal property rate where the valuations have been much more volatile. We had a huge increase in 21. We equalized the rate back to 305 from 360. Then we had a drop in the auto prices. Valuations went down. We had to, last year, again, try to equalize, and I think it went up to, 340? So we've been chasing that, and that's a lot, as I said, more volatile than the real estate assessments. But commenting on the real estate assessments, I received mine, and I will tell you that based upon our local market, they're pretty much right on the money, whether it's housing or farmland. Based on purchases I've made in the last 2 years and current market value, they're really close. Maybe in some cases a little tad under the market value, but I think that the assessment company overall, I think they did as due diligence as possible. So I think we're on the way to being able to try to keep our taxes down. And I'm going to throw this at, even though this isn't talking about taxes, we start budget season on Thursday. And every Thursday for 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to have departments, internal, external, the school system are going to be in here asking for money. And in the 4 years I've been on this board, I rarely ever see a taxpayer come to those hearings and say, wait a minute, is that spending really necessary? And that leaves the Board of Supervisors to really advocate on behalf of the taxpayers, which we do. And we've kept spending down below the rate of inflation. Tax receipts have stayed down below the rate of inflation. The tax rate on property at 74 cents hasn't been raised in 4 years. And I think that as far as the intent of the board is that we're going to look after the interests of the taxpayers in this county. So again, thank you. I think the process, it's a little bit hurried, but I think we're in pretty good shape on that. And thank you for the work you did on this. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Jonathan, you got anything?
If the board is through, I want to make sure you
go
have
ahead.
comment. I asked Kim to bring up on the screen, maybe backtrack it real quick, Kim. You know what page we're on there. Go to the website so our folks online and in public can see. The Commissioner of Revenue on the county website, if you start from the beginning, you go under the Government tab. We're going to go a little slow. Click on the Commissioner of Revenues tab. There's going to be a portion for real estate. You click to your left side, and then General Reassessment has its own link. So once you click that, you're going to have a massive amount of information. There will be the press release that was spoken of, but I really want to get to the schedule. So go down to the FAQ link. There's a 2025 reassessment frequently asked questions page. The commissioner talked about value changes from 2018 to present. You can kind of see that indicated a little better in that color chart. But lastly, if you go to page 4 of that document, please, Kim, currently the assessors, Wingate Appraisals, is here. There is a fillable form online, or there's an email, or there's a phone number listed that citizens can call and schedule an appointment with them. That is the schedule you see listed there of the dates they have available. That's first step, if you will. If for whatever reason you feel like your data or whatever you have is not in agreement with the assessors, there is another process. We are required by law, and the court has appointed our members of our Board of Equalization. They took their oaths last week, and they had their organizational meeting. They have established their meeting schedule. Their meeting schedule begins in April. As Mr. Daniel pointed out, you have a year to appeal. But you have, that is kind of your next level, if you will. I have had a couple of citizens stop by my office today. I am not the assessor, but I always work to help citizens in any way or try to point them in the right direction. It does seem to be a lot of questions around, oh my goodness, we're at 74 cents tax rate right now. My assessment is this. And it's easily to think that, okay, this is going to be my new value based on that tax rate. We are required by law, the attorney's beside me so he can smack me if I'm wrong, but we are required by law to equalize the rate. It is against the law for your decision makers to stay at that 74 cents per 100 real estate rate. So I just want to be clear in that. I'm speaking for me, not the board, but it's required by law. We are holding the public hearing. I believe that will be scheduled for April 8th for the board to consider. We will be informed. I believe books will be closed by then, right, Mr. Daniel? So the board will be informed what the equalized rate would look like. We don't know if that's 60 cents per 100 right now. We don't know it's 50 per, we don't know that yet because the assessor process has to be completed. That will go to the board. We'll hear that information tonight. Please, public, come out. That will be scheduled for April 8th. That is the equalization part. As far as the budget's concerned, as you heard Supervisor Jewett mention, our work sessions begin on Thursday. We believe, as far as what the schedule looks like now, the board will hold their public hearing on the budget as well as the tax rate for calendar year 2025 in, I believe, April 22nd. That's when we're looking, and all that'll be advertised, but that is what our adopted budget schedule looks like that is also found online. The board can reserve to vote the same night as the public hearing, or they can choose to forego to the next meeting. But that is the sequence that we have planned. So equalization will occur first. That public hearing will be April 8th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Daniels, thank you. Thank you. It's just the first step of the process. Kevin?
Can I just ask Jonathan where the public notices will be posted since that's changed in recent times?
The public notice for the hearing dates for the assessors. So I know the county website has that. It was on, I believe, the forms that were mailed, had those times available. We just took down, because we didn't want to confuse what tonight was, but they have signs up when you enter this building. Essentially, you walk down this hallway. I know it's got a stop sign now, but we keep that door open. There's a conference room, assessors work, and then they reserve this room. So there's a fillable form online. If you want to fill that out to schedule your appeal, You can email directly or call that number, but that schedule should have been on your mailed form you received in the mail. It's also on the county website that Kim just walked through. And if any of that becomes hard to find, call my office, call Brian's office. We will make sure we give you those date and times, but that's where they're currently located, Kevin.
Well, and the public hearings, like for tax rates, that gets published as well. Isn't that now in Mad Rap? Is that where that's?
We have not advertised that yet. There is a scheduled time that we require by law, so many days first advertisement, so many days second advertisement before the public hearing. But that's where it would be, yes.
No, it was a good question. It was a good question. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Montgomery.
Oh, yeah, leave that up. Leave that up. I'm gonna mention that. It said you're notify me.
Okay.
Oh. Go to your notify me page real quick.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm gonna do one more shameless plug if I may, and we may need to, we've done this twice, and I may need to take an ad out in the paper again. I encourage the public, there's been, I think, at least 2 people recently that went by and saw our wonderful deputy clerk, Ms. Turner, who's in my office. So if you want to know how you can get information, we have a subscription service that you pay for, that the board budgets for. It's called Notify Me. You have to set up your own account, and you can register. You can choose, can you go up a little bit, Kim? My up might be your down anyway. You can choose which department do you want to get information from. So once you signed up, you elect what you want to get news from. It comes via text. It'll come via email. So that's another way that we're trying to get information out to the general public. So if you're not aware of that, please come see us, call our office, go on the website, but please subscribe to Notify Me, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. All right. I hate to ask, but anything else? Anybody else got any questions? It's not the end of the world. It's just the first step. We're not allowed to raise taxes through an assessment. 2019, we all see what housing is doing, and that's land and houses. Everybody's got adjusted, including ours. We'll get through this process. It's just part of it. And the rate will go down based on this. I've seen multiple comments. We all pay attention to the bulletin as well. It's entertaining. Factual is questioning. They say the rate is not going to go down. The rate certainly is going down. Like, there is no question. Independent of what we do with the budget, the rate is going down from 74 to an equalized rate. That's where we're at. All right. Now, school zone cameras. That should be fun, too. This is one that we're not required by law to do, but we want to hear from everybody. Mr. Weekly, tell us about these school zone cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, as you stated, not required by law, although the code does provide for speed camera enforcement if a local government chooses to do so in the 2 areas of construction zones and school zones. Sheriff Weaver came before us to request consideration of this. As you know, they do the speed enforcement in the county, independent of state police, of course. And they have learned of providers of speed camera that they're familiar with that has this program throughout the state of Virginia. The Sheriff Weaver would like to see this at a minimum be implemented along the Route 29 corridor, specifically at the school, where the school zone is. I want to be clear, the request and proposal for the board's consideration and the public giving input would be for schools. This is not an expansive of throw these over every, intersection along Route 29 anywhere else. This is for school zone speed camera enforcement program, as such labeled in the subject. So since that request came in, the board had tasked staff to get with the sheriff, speak to Blue Line Solutions, and Mr. Campbell's here tonight as well. I would ask the chair to call him up momentarily. He can speak directly to the service that they provide. Blue Line Solutions did come up, and it's in your packet, and the public should have been able to see if they reviewed the packet, and did some, I guess you could say radar, and they have some speed data of counting the speed in that given time period. It was pretty enlightening to look at. From there, I think a couple supervisors met with me as well as the sheriff and Mr. Campbell. I'm pointing here, he's actually over there, my apologies. To talk about, okay, we know we have dated equipment along Route 29. I think years ago there was an accident that took out one of the signs in the medium, so you only had that one in the southbound lane anyway. What does that look like? Hypothetically, who would pay for it and so forth? And we have in an email as well, Mr. Campbell went out, did the research, did the analysis. It's a little over $60,000 to upgrade, if you will, in that school zone. However, in that email, it would clarify, go back up right there. There are no financial costs to Madison County due to construction. Obviously, that would come out of, if there are any civil fines, there would be a recouping of the cost to them, but the county would not pay that directly out of their coffers for that. There is cooperative procurement with County in the state of Virginia, should the board want to consider moving forward with this, as well as there's a sample, when I say sample, it is a contract with Madison County for consideration should the board want to consider. The first year, it is roughly almost a 3-year term contract. The first year, I do not believe it allows for termination. You could do so for or without cause in years 2 and 3. And there is some language in there that would state if you canceled early, you would be responsible for what their normal monthly equipment fee would be. So you essentially have to buy out whatever that cost would be. Again, the sheriff is looking at this, and I know Mr. Campbell can speak as well, as not as a revenue generator. As the sheriff told me back when I was a board member, highway safety is highway safety. It's try to lower speeds on 29. Do fines and fees come to the county? Sure. Do they get redirected to the sheriff's office to help with operations? Sure. But this is not something of, okay, low on revenue, let's put these in. I do understand that the enforcement of this program would be only during school hours. This camera system, while there are other localities nearby that have this, Greene County is not one of them. There are other providers. But the program that, or the provider that Mr. Campbell represents, we've been informed this would only be during school hours. I think it's safe to say, and this is all hypothetical, if the county considered this and would move forward, we do realize there may be initial speeding here.
School hours or school zone hours?
It should be school zone hours. I don't believe
Which is
it's.
30 minutes in the evening and 30 minutes in the morning.
Yes, sir,
There you go.
that
All
is
right. Thank you.
correct.
Please, you're doing great.
Now, I believe the sheriff would like to see these on Fairground Road at some point, but again, the idea is to start with the 29 school zone area. The way this works, and again, we have the expert here, camera takes a picture of you within a certain speed. There has to be a sworn officer. Yours truly, not that I want to do it anyway, would not be reviewing these. It has to be a sworn officer of the law to review these because things could get challenged. You have to go to court. Blue Line offers that services as well if needed to come up to participate in that process. So that is the updates that I have for the board. Legal has looked at the contract that is in the packet. However, your purpose here tonight was let's have a public hearing to see how the public feels about said program. So, Mr. Wright's here if you have any questions. If not, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to call on Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, we're going to him next. You got anything for administration?
And I will say quickly, it is confusing because Kim sent me the VACO bill earlier. There was a speed camera bill that had to do with speed camera enforcement that did die, but initially that bill had all funds, the civil fines were being pointed to Richmond. That bill died. Do not be confused. There's a Senate bill by, I think, Senator Williams or whatever, I don't know what locality he's from, that has to do with stop signs and pedestrian crosswalks. They still have speed camera listed in there. Two different things, but that bill is on its way to the governor's desk to either sign or veto. But that has to do with pedestrian crossings and stop signs. Two different things. What we have in front of you is school zone enforcement.
Just one quick question then. So is it for 36 weeks, which is basically the school year, or is it for 52 weeks?
My understanding is when school's in session. So whatever the school calendar is, it should follow that.
Jim, you got comments?
No, I just wanted to address a question. What's the historical data on the effectiveness of these once they go in? Does it, you have data?
Yeah,
Yes,
please,
please.
Mr. Campbell.
How much does it reduce speeding?
And
et
for
cetera?
the record, Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Campbell with Blue Line Solutions LLC.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you all. And one of the things that I'd like to lay out before we kind of flesh the program out is most of the information that I'm going to share with you all, the data and the factual stuff from the program, is predicated on my experience as a retired sergeant with the Virginia State Police. Just the understanding of traffic safety, life safety, but more importantly, human behavior when they're driving a motor vehicle. To answer your question, in 2024, all of the jurisdictions that we partner with in Virginia, we had a 92.8% decrease in speeding violations in those particular school zones. Now, that's very important because there's a lot of misinformation across the state on these programs, and this is one of the things I love about being able to educate people. So first and foremost, there have been cases which came to the attention of the General Assembly. That's why there was a big spotlight on the ASC program. There are cases around the state where jurisdictions went into partnership with a vendor with the sole purpose to create this into a cash cow. An enormous amount of revenue has been generated. One of the things that we do before the first summons or citation or ticket is ever issued is our big thing is public information and education. So if you remember back in the old days before the move over law came into effect, I remember working down in Wytheville, Galax, and Hillsville, working the interstates long before there was a move over law. And those were the days where tractor and trailers and people could get as close to the fog line as they could. Very dangerous situations. But one of the things that the General Assembly, the state police, VDOT, VDM, state agencies, local agencies did, they didn't start out by writing 10 million tickets when that law came into effect. They had a massive statewide marketing campaign. You can remember the posters, the social media, all that. And one of the things that we know works is that you have to educate people on their driving behaviors. Now, enforcement is part of that, but you never start out with enforcement. One of the things I want to point out here, this is the cornerstone data that we start with. This is the problem that we have at Madison County High School. In a 5-day period during the AM and PM hours when the flashing beacon lights are operating, you had 1,329 violations at 10 miles an hour or greater over the posted speed. Now, one thing that I really want everyone to understand is the General Assembly gives a 9-mile-per-hour speed tolerance to a motorist when they are entering an active school zone. There is no other statute in the Commonwealth that gives someone the ability to speed 9 miles an hour over. I will tell you from a state police perspective, going into a reduced speed school zone, being given 9 miles per hour, that's an enormous amount of grace that's given to people. Out of that 1,329, over 1,000 of those violations were in excess of 15 miles an hour over the posted 35-mile-per-hour speed. Half of that 1,000 was 21 miles an hour or greater over the reduced speed. So I share that with you. One of the things that we aim for is to decrease those speed violations. And when I make presentations across the state, one of the things that I always want to point out, if Blue Line Solutions was in the business of trying to make as much money as we can, we would not highlight our reduction totals. So I hope that answers your question, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Campbell, what else do you want to share?
Well, in the interest of time and also not recreating the wheel, Mr. Weekly has done an outstanding job with the program overview. With your permission, I will entertain any questions or just follow your lead, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Start down there.
Don't
What do you
want to
got?
steal it. You want to ask the question about if someone's summoned and they don't pay?
It's not something I want to highlight, but can you run through the cost of the county for this?
Yeah, so there's zero cost to to the jurisdiction, to Madison County. Let me play this-
Forever?
Forever, that's correct.
Okay.
Let me play this out if I come through the school zone there on 29 and I get a summons, if permissible. So I come through exceeding 10 miles an hour or greater, I get a summons in the mail. That data is captured. The rear of my vehicle is what's captured, the license plate itself. There's nothing frontal, the driver, none of that. The only information that is captured is the basic DMV information. Randy Campbell, I live down in Campbell County, Lynchburg area. That's the information that is sent to Blue Line Solutions. A picture of high resolution is captured of my vehicle, time, date, all of the data. Blue Line receives that, and they approve that as a valid violation. That violation is then sent to the Madison County Sheriff's Office. This is where due process comes in under the law. A sworn Madison County deputy will approve that. He sends it back to Blue Line. That information is now created a summons, and that is sent to me via U.S. mail at my residence in Lynchburg. Now, for every paid fine, $75 of that fine comes back to Madison County. $25 of every processed fine goes to Blue Line for doing all of the administrative front end. We talked about the infrastructure in the school zone, the older infrastructure. We come in and we replace all of that at no cost. We figure that our return of investment after 2 years, we will be able to get our money back of what we put into that. So I'll stop right there. Does that give you a picture?
Yes, so if somebody got the summons, let's say it just ended up that the person didn't pay the $100 or whatever the fine is, would Madison County still get charged 25, or only if it's actually collected?
So how that works is if they don't pay the summons, so the summons was still processed, the non-compliant revenue that comes into Madison County, when I say non-compliant revenue, those that pay the fines, the difference between, we have about a 75 to 80% pay rate in Virginia. The difference for those that don't pay the fine, that's where that $25 is taken out. In the contract, as you saw, you have a letter from the CEO, who's retired law enforcement. Madison County will never receive an invoice or a bill for any monies during the contract relationship and partnership.
So even, I'm going to give you an absurd example.
I know where you're going. Go ahead, sir.
But in 2027, if it ended up that nobody ever paid anything,
Yes,
we wouldn't have to fork over for the 10,000 speeders.
that is correct. And
$250,000,
sometimes I'm asked,
okay.
what if we get 100% compliance, which we know will never occur?
Right.
You'll still never be billed, because obviously that's what we're aiming for is compliance. But you will not, there's no back door. We're going to come back after you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
What about the lease of the equipment, if you're gonna go that, yeah, there's two options, A and B, but one is leasing the equipment. And so we get our almost 100% compliance, that would be perfect, but we're not gonna get that. But you get down to that point, then we're paying you, but we're not bringing in any revenue to do that.
I will share this with you. I would not go the lease route, sir. I would go the 75-25, the fees for service. The only reason that we have a lease option is there was a jurisdiction in the Commonwealth that their procurement officer just absolutely could not believe that they could procure these services and not have to pay us some type of lease fee.
All right, who else has questions? Go ahead, please.
And this is for both you, Mr. Cameron, also maybe Mr. Weekly. Let's hypothetically assume this went into place, and then there's an average for the first month of 1,000 summons per week that have to come back to the sheriff's office. How much time are we talking is going to be required for a deputy to process those?
Yeah, on average, it takes about 60 to 90 seconds to process violations. This is something that Sheriff Weaver and I've talked about. I predict, because you've only got one school zone that you're dealing with, I predict you're going to see a drop to where it's not going to create an enormous amount of man hours, But the General Assembly has updated code language that if the governor signs off on it, as of July the 1st, you can earmark the non-compliant revenue for manpower associated with the program. I.e., if this was a large jurisdiction and you had multiple zones, Sheriff Weaver could actually find certain people, and that would be their full-time job, and they could pay them from that. Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Other questions? All right.
So all the maintenance of the equipment, calibration of the equipment, the county is not responsible
We
for that?
handle every bit of that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Campbell, right now, I'm coming in from the south, going north, and a lot of times I don't pay attention, and I end up being there when school's letting out, which I hate. But right now, the flashing lights at the high school, they're really hard to see because of the sun angle. I mean, I know what time it is, so I know they should be flashing, but they're really tough to see. So something like that would definitely have to be remedied. And also, when I'm driving down 29 and I see a state trooper or a deputy with his lights on up in front of me, I slow down. So why wouldn't a deputy's vehicle, like they do down here at Waverly Yale School, they sit out there in that little median with the lights on, why isn't that just as effective?
Sure. That's a great question, and a lot of people ask that around the state. So first and foremost, we find ourselves in this period of time in our culture. I don't know what the manpower allocation is in Madison County. I don't know if they're full strength. But that is what I call a reactive response to a problem, a public safety problem. And one of the lessons learned over the years in public safety is we tried to address things from a reactive perspective. Let's put a deputy or a city officer, somebody out there all the time. But what we've learned is they can't be there all the time. One of the things with traffic safety technology that's proactive is once you go through that conditioning process, that's what I call when you start educating people. People start learning that when you come through Madison County, it's a Monday through Friday, it's the morning or the PM hours, that there is a mitigation tool that is operating during those times to keep me accountable as a driver. I remember the days very well of let's put somebody out there, but when somebody's not there, people go right back to the way they've always been driving.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. And also challenges to, I assume someone that gets a citation for this can challenge it.
Yes.
How does that play
So
out?
The code is very specific that if you get a summons, the only rebuttal that the code offers is that if, let's say I was driving your vehicle, I speed through the Madison County school zones, you're going to get the summons in there.
Right.
So what the court requires you to do is fill out an affidavit. We either can handle that through Blue Line Solutions or the clerk's office in Madison can handle that. And you have to provide the name and the physical address of who was driving your vehicle. The case will be dismissed. But one of the things that I see on a regular basis around the state is when I visit these jurisdictions for court, the number one thing that I see is people will come in and they are deceptive when they say that, well, when I came through there, the lights weren't flashing. That's where the deputy or the city officer or whoever the approving LEOs are, when they present the evidence to the judge that the lights were operating, it's interesting, you don't hear anybody else come up and plead that. So yes, everyone has due process and they can come into court.
Right.
They're not guilty.
All right, here's a good one. So on these snow days we've had, I'm
Yeah.
coming back from the farm and the lights are flashing, but nobody's in school.
Yep.
So
Good.
now what?
So what we would do once we get to that point where we go into partnership, Blue Line Solutions will have a copy of the current school year of, 25-26 of Madison County. That's what they operate off of all those hard dates. But when you have something, an unexpected closure like you're talking about,
Yeah.
whoever our points of contact are with Madison County Sheriff's Office, they always, within 24 hours or less, reach out and let us know that any summons that may have been captured during that time period, they're voided and destroyed.
All right, yeah, because last week we had an instance where everybody went to school in the morning, but they let out at 11, so.
Yes.
Then the lights were flashing in the afternoon, no question about that.
We work with the town of Front Royal, and of course, they have as many snow issues and weather issues up there as
Right.
well. So that works very seamlessly, and that's where that old school good communication, that's how the program works very well.
That's all I got. Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen.
To the public. Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned that you had like a 92.8% reduction in the places that you are, but you didn't say where you are.
We currently have 23 partnerships, and I don't have the entire list with me. For Northwest Virginia right now, we're setting up for Rappahannock County, we're in the town of Front Royal, we're in Fauquier County, we're working with Spotsylvania County, but we are from Southwest Virginia all the way back over across the whole state.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I have one too.
yes.
Follow up on what Cardi asked you. If the school is 2 hour delay, do
Yes.
the lights come on 2 hours? Will it actually come on at 10 to 10:30 instead of 8 to 8:30?
So that depends on how the jurisdiction operates. If the lights are old school, as I call them, they're gonna come on what time those things are programmed. That's where it's very important where that good communication comes in. They now have technology where whoever, let's say in Madison County, is responsible for the light schedules, they literally can, from their phone, they can reset those lights to come on at a certain time.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Kevin, please.
So I'm still sort of on the mode of taxes and Madison County taxpayers and them having to foot the bill, and it really feeds right into this. I mean, most of the people who are going to be paying these bills are going to be the Madison County taxpayers. A lot of them are the people that are rolling through 29 at this point in time. So I could be way off on numbers, but I'm just sort of gathering numbers from what you said, sir. And it sounds like, you know, at least in the beginning, we had 1,000 people a week that were speeding during that time. So that's like 200 people a day. And if you do that over the course of a 180-day school year and a $25 fee that's going to them each time that happens, that's almost $500,000. So I'm sure that the numbers come down some, but that's a ton of taxpayer money that's going to someone that we're in partnership with, that we're deciding to generate that instead of, you know, and creating that burden on our citizens. Now, I'm not out there cheering for people that speed like myself. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I would ask the question, so do we have signs out there that say cameras in use? You know, how much signage and what are we doing to really, number one, to notify people that we've got that signage? Number two, you know, doing what our ultimate goal is, Mr. Jewett, and that is to slow people down, right? I want us to remember that our goal is to slow people down, not to generate a lot of revenue for our vendor and also for ourselves. I mean, gosh, it almost sounds like if he's getting, you know, $500,000, we're getting $1.5 million. And of course, those numbers are going to dwindle from week one on down, but it's still a lot of money that's coming out of, in large part, our taxpayers of Madison. So, you know, I want to try to be careful before we jump right in bed with doing this and think about the options that we can do to slow people down. Do we need to cost our taxpayers that much money to slow people down? What are other options to slow them down? Because that's our ultimate goal. So.
Good.
Just a quick question. We, out of 1,100 people that we caught during that week, that were 10 miles an hour or more, we have no idea if they're from Charlottesville or from Madison or from Culpeper. Do we know?
We do not.
Yeah.
You know, unless, well, the people who process the summons do. But with your permission, may I address the gentleman's remark?
Sure.
Yes, as far as the signage, VDOT has very strict compliance within how they set up. So let me say this again from experience, and I say it very respectfully. One of the things that makes people safe is accountability for everyone. And so the accountability of the drivers that are coming through these school zones, they're going to have an enormous amount of signage that is warning them that you're going into a photo speed zone. And I'm going to speak very frankly here. People ignore on a regular basis the flashing beacon lights. They just, we've learned through human behavior, I'm going to drive like I want to drive. That's how people, that's a mindset of a lot of people. But we are going to make sure the signage is there, we'll be in compliance. I would like to reiterate to the citizens of Madison County and BOS members, this isn't a tax burden because this money is nothing that's in your budget. The $25 processing fees are coming out of the revenue that people are paying that are non-compliant. So if I miss something, please let me know.
But it's still a burden on the taxpayer. I mean, it's a new.
It's
not a burden if people are compliant.
There's, I think to clarify this, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to have this hearing. And I understand. I think there's massive benefits on upgrading the lights because we all know, I think the polite term would be the lights are vintage. They are not. They're just old junk. They're going to cost $60K. It's up. Somebody will pull it down. Blue Line is willing to put that in there. I do have the comment going is 29. I do think you're going to catch a lot of people going to Charlottesville, and just going up and down the 29 corridor. If we put them on 29, there's a very high probability they're going to go end up on Fairgrounds, and Fairgrounds will not be people going by Madison County. Fairgrounds will be Madison taxpayers and citizens. I'm a terrible driver. As everybody can tell by what's parked outside. That school zone stuff, though, is super, super important. The revenue side of this is a benefit, certainly. The safety of school zone, flashing lights or not, kids going out, buses coming out, that is paramount. Everybody understands that. Everybody wants safest things for kids, nothing terrible to happen like that. It's more, the question is you want to start with cameras in Madison that are ticketing. And that is what it is. I'm sorry. I hate to say it like that. It's just the nanny state coming in. And I have concerns about that. Safety, paramount. But I do see this as a start going right along, and that would be a problem. The only area that does not qualify for these is in front of Waverly right next to us because the speed limit's already at 25 miles per hour. We can't do a school zone there because you're in violation on top of that. Maybe that gets rid of the 9 mile per hour discrepancy. We can write some tickets there. Other public comments? Other public comments? Anybody else have any?
Yeah, I'd like to know, we're selling it as a safety issue, how many accidents, how many?
And your name, sir? Your name?
Joe Sanson, S-A-N-S-O-N-E.
Thank you.
I can address that, sir.
Please.
Yes, one of the things that I touched on earlier.
Do you mind repeating the question, please?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
how many fatalities and
How many accidents?
Yes.
And then how many fatalities? I mean, it should be available if it's really a safety issue versus a cash grab issue.
Sure, and I appreciate you asking that question. So one of the things that I spoke on earlier was the reactive mindset versus a proactive mindset. VDOT has all the information of the number of accidents that are there.
Okay, so you don't know what I just asked, how many?
Well, I'm getting it. I'm gonna answer it if you'll let me finish, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's say there's been zero, let's say there's never been an accident there, never been a fatality, zero.
Okay.
One of the things that VDOT, State Police, Madison County, nobody can capture are the almost accidents and the near misses. And I guarantee if I took a public poll, which I'm not, how many people drive 29 that you see the aggressive driving? That's proactive. We're trying to mitigate and prevent an accident from occurring. I don't have those stats. That's something that I don't operate off of because of, this is a proactive way of preventing. I'll give you an example. One of the board members talked about the school buses. When you've got an ingress and egress there on 29, when school is letting out or it's coming in, if somebody's running 45 to 55 miles an hour versus the 35 or the 9 that is allowed, the dynamics of that crash are going to be so much worse. Now let's get up to 60 miles an hour or 65. I can tell you from experience, the faster people are going, the devastation from those crashes are so much worse. So the slower we can get people to go, if we do have a crash, hopefully you don't have as bad of a personal injury, let alone a fatality.
Thank you. It's a good question. We'll reach out to VDOT and go from there.
I've been in this county 19 years. You're right about the name of state. I used to live in Fairfax, did business in Maryland and DC. In every jurisdiction, it starts with one zone, and then it grows, and it grows. And quite frankly, using the example that my fellow citizen used, if it's $500,000 going to these guys, guess what? We can afford to hire a couple sheriffs and put them there. Right? And really, the board's got to look at it this way also. A lot of the citizens aren't happy about the increase. You want to add traffic cameras to it? That's not a good look for the county. But again, it's an easy question. I want to know what the facts are.
Well,
I mean, how can you make a decision if you don't know what the facts are?
we certainly can get some numbers. Ms. Campbell, I'll come back to you. Hey, Federico, can you hand the microphone, please? And what we should do here to speed this up, everybody needs to go through, make a public comment, and then we'll get Mr. Campbell to reply to those. Please, Ms. Campbell.
Sure. So my question
related.
is, obviously, as driving behavior, they learn that these zones are in place and drivers slow down naturally during those time zones, the numbers will decrease. If we get to a point that we find that there's not enough need, or I don't know if that's ever happened, but what is the out of your contract? How does the county get out of that if there's enough funds to replace it with our own lights?
So we have never gotten to the point where there's not a need.
All right, Ms. Campbell.
I'm sorry.
Wait.
I apologize.
All right, so we've got no need. I've got a note on that one. Who else has public comments or questions? Please, Mr. Sharman.
Hand him the mic.
Yeah, please give him the mic. No, it's based on recording in minutes. We appreciate it. All right, Mr. Sharman.
I was just wondering about data privacy. You're capturing the license plate. Yes. How is that held? How is that disseminated, et cetera? And then I might have missed it. I stepped out for just a bit, so I might have missed it. Is there ever any potential criminal ramification or insurance ramification for the person who has the violation? Yes.
All right.
And then also just kind of touch on Mr. Sandstone's question. The only fatality I recall at that intersection was a law enforcement vehicle struck a couple educators who were coming through that, and they were killed. That was, 20 years ago or so? Mm-hmm. There might be more.
We certainly can ask from VDOT. They can get us all the information on the specs on that.
Thank you.
Other public comments or questions? Please, take the microphone, please, Carl. Thank you.
It seems a few years ago, VDOT was in here and talked about the cameras or
Your name,
the lights.
what's your last name,
I'm
Carl?
sorry,
Thank
Carl
you.
Kirby. VDOT was in here and talked about the lights on 29 and that they weren't actually required to begin with because of the fence that is alongside the high school. So I don't know. It's just a little perplexing that we're looking to upgrade the lights and add cameras when VDOT, if I remember correctly, and it's been a few years, was in here and talked about we didn't actually have to have a school zone there.
We can check on that one too. Other public comments? Anybody else? Thank you. Nope. No. All right, Mr. Campbell, we've got the need after everybody stops speeding in school zones, and then data privacy and what it will do to insurance.
Yes, we've never ran across a situation where there was such a high degree of compliance that there's no need. But I will tell you, as far as the integrity of our leadership, it's a law enforcement veteran-owned organization, that if Madison County reaches that I'm sure that things would be amicably resolved. But I don't have an experience from that. Second,
Data privacy.
data privacy. Inlets, NLETS, National Law Enforcement Telecommunications System. That is a nationwide information bank that every sheriff's office, state police, city police, everybody has access when they run someone's plate. We are vetted through inlets. All of that information is encrypted very heavily. And people who have access to it are vetted, i.e. like the Madison County Sheriff's Office, whoever the approving officers. So it's a very heavy protection, encrypted data that covers that right there.
All right, effects on insurance from these citations.
Yes, the penalty for this violation is a civil penalty. It's a $100 fine. There is no points assessed to a operator's license, and there's nothing reported to the insurance company.
We got to give him a microphone. Hold on, Mr. Sharman.
So if somebody doesn't pay, does that ever become contempt, which is jailable?
Yes, so if somebody doesn't pay, there are regulations in place that, say, the Madison County Sheriff's Office can follow up to, under 19.2-73, that they have the means to follow up on payment of that fine.
All right. Any,
One more thing that I would like
please,
to.
why not?
46.2 Code of Virginia, 873. That will answer your question on the flashing beacon lights. I don't have any knowledge of what VDOT may or, but that is the statute that governs any school zone that is approved by VDOT, that they have to have the flashing beacon lights in those school zones.
What do you have over there? Dash, Mr. Dash.
Kim will bring it up. I just sent her a dashboard. This dashboard shows crash data, fatality data. The year only goes back to 2016. Being here my entire life, I definitely can remember two. One was, I think, Mr. Hicks was the teacher that sadly lost his life before the traffic light. And I believe another one was either a prior board member or their spouse. So those are the two historic I kind of remember. But VDOT data, go to fatalities map, Kim, to the bottom right. And if you select under city, county, it's Madison. I'm showing a total of 28 fatalities, but various portions, not that intersection from 2016 to present. But to answer that question, I can recall two in my almost 46 years here on Earth.
One of the things, if you research this closer, Mr. Weekly.
Yes, zoom in. Deselect all from the top, please, Kim.
For those fatalities that have occurred in Madison County, I believe it would be wise to see how many of them were speed related.
Yes. There's nothing from, and if you click the year, it's only going to show 2016 to present. So that's why when you scroll into that intersection at the high school, which is Mountaineer Lane and 29 North, you won't see any there because there's nothing from 2016, according to VDOT's map. And they're tied somehow, you would notice more than I, they're tied somehow with Virginia State Police reporting. They got some system.
Yes.
So that's where they collect their data from, is from the Virginia State Police.
All right.
All right.
Anybody else?
You can go back to the agenda.
Anybody else?
please.
Anybody else from the public? All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Campbell.
Drive carefully.
That's very good. Seems like we've got some questions to answer. Get us some answers, please, Mr. Weekly. See where we go from there. No, crashes, not just fatalities, absolutely.
Speaking of which, we just had another one on
15, yeah.
This map, if I zoom there, you'll see,
Yeah.
you can see the green dots all around.
Thank you.
It's been quite problematic.
They're really a problem, like in every way. Yeah. All right, thank you all for coming and talking to us about it. Old business, Hoover Ridge Barn update. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. Just very quickly on that, we're still waiting on our check. There will be a claim paid to the county, I believe around $105,000. I know some may be new in the audience. At our Hoover Ridge Park, the January, I believe it was 7th winter storm, there was around 7 inches of heavy snow, caused a roof collapse. Went out there today, actually some of the sidewalls around that are even pulling off. So we had the engineering letter that stated unsafe structure, recommended demolition. We had our building official look at it. We had VACOR, our insurance provider, look at it, all in agreement. At the last meeting, I believe it was, I asked the board to authorize me to demo the building. The Board of Supervisors did do that. So once we have the check, we can move forward with that demolition.
We also need to move, has the transformer been moved by REC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not yet. They have been contacted. We hope that will be done soon. The proximity of the transformer will not allow us to demo that. I believe it's probably 15 feet off the building. It's too close for our demolition activity.
We're waiting on the check, the moving of the transformer, and then the removal of the safety fence so we can burn this barn to the ground.
That is correct.
That's what we're doing. It's the cheapest option. We're trying not to spend your money. That's what we're doing. Anybody have questions on this? All right, moving on. EMS renovation project, Mr. Weekly.
Yes, sir. We finally have temporary occupancy of the building. Our team is over there. They're actually running calls. Our 2 primary ambulances is being run out of that location. Until the upper bays are complete, which they are wiring up the motors to the garage doors, then we can park the other 2 inside of that building. So right now, those other 2 are at the lease station that we have until February 28th. We anticipate that being, they were wiring them up today, but before this meeting, I didn't go down just to see it's finalized, so I'd imagine that's being completed. But as soon as that upper bay is ready, we will put those ambulances over there. Our carport structures are supposed to be relocated tomorrow to that site. So moving along with that, and there's some minor patching holes in walls of our lease station, so we're properly leaving that with our landlord, and then we'll be officially done with that lease site. We'll be at our new building. Mr. Chairman, as we move closer to the warmer days, I have not asked the board for a certain month yet. Initially, I was thinking maybe the board would like to hold an open house for the public in April. I'd like to push that either late May or early June. That'll give us some time. What we didn't put in this contract is like landscaping and some minor touch-up stuff. We may put some little projects in our Madison Day, or as well as some staff do some internal things that was not included in this project. But overall, the board, you're welcome to walk at any time. I like to come to the board, and we'll have a open house date sometime in the next couple months so they can really see their investment in the functionality that that station now possesses prior to what it was before with the volunteers.
And we are collecting from our contractor damages based on them
We-
being over the date of the contract.
Yes, sir. So there's 2 dates. There's substantial completion, which you get in liquidated damages. I think it's $1,000 a day. And if you do not reach the actual end of I think it's 40 days after substantial completion, then there's other liquidated damages. We do not see us getting to that ladder, but we're definitely in the substantial completion liquidated damage part. I think they were probably about 10 to 12 days over. So there will be some funds there.
One more part. Questions, comments on this one? May or June sounds good.
All right, thank you.
All right, next. Industrial Revitalization Fund, Krugersville Elementary School. Mr. Weekly?
Thank you. I'm sorry I don't have a substantial update on that. Last meeting, you heard from, we had Mr. Shapiro here who wishes to seek this grant, and we had DHCD, who's the State Agency Department of Housing Community Development, that administers this grant and would essentially, if a grant was applied for and awarded, those funds would come to the county, which then essentially could be, as an economic development tool, loaned to the property. There are certain properties that meet that criteria of eligibility. The board's direction to me last time was, let's put a meeting together with some stakeholders. We have scheduled that meeting, I believe, Kim, tomorrow. There'll be economic development, there'll be myself, legal. We will have IDA. I reached out to Mr. Parsons, who's the treasurer of IDA. Part of the reason is if you were to move forward, if that's your choice, and you were awarded this, we'd like to have the IDAs involved in this early on so they can ask their questions as well. Essentially, again, the grant would come to the county. They would load it to the individual. In this case, it's Mr. Shapiro who would like to apply for the Cricketsville School. Each local government, I see the town in the audience tonight, they're a local government, you're allowed one of these applications a year. And again, it's a loan. It'd be a fixed interest rate of 2.5% over 20 years for the individual. There would be a signed agreement amongst that party that's not the county, the party, which in this case, if we're to move forward, would be Mr. Shapiro and DHCD. So all that performance metrics, all that one-to-one dollar match is between that person and DHCD.
And to add clarity to something that is out misinformation, there is not Madison, it's all your taxpayer money. It is not money from Madison County going into this. This is just, we are an applicant for economic development. This is not coming from our budget that we're doing this year.
I think that's a good point. I saw that online as well. I think I want to point out, too, it just so happens the applicant right now that's being considered is Mr. Shapiro. But this industrial revitalization fund would be available each year for any economic development that has blight. There's several categories there. But again, the one-to-one match, all that, we had the HCD online last time. It's online if folks want to play it back. I asked that specific question. And hypothetically, if you wanted to apply, the grant would be scored. If they scored at least above 70 and they're awarded, that money would flow into the county. You have options of whether you want to administer it through your IDA board, just like you do with Woodbury and some of their other bonds. IDA would then set up an account, and they would administer that. They are the vessel for the county. The county does not touch that. The treasurer, the finance, myself, we do not touch that. It is my understanding, we're going to dive into this more at this meeting, that by doing it through the IDA, if the county so chose, that money that's being paid back from Mr. Shapiro that would go into the IDA account, it would be allowed as a revolving fund. So you let that money sit there for a little bit. You can use it for other economic development purposes. So that's a plus if you choose to move forward with the IDA. There is a service company. There are probably many. There's one that Ms. Gardner mentioned at the last meeting that could administer this. It's my understanding, though, those monies would stay with them, or I don't know if it goes back to DHCD or how, but that money would not stay in Madison for economic development opportunities, kind of that revolving loan. So that's where we're at. We have the meeting set for tomorrow. What we learn, we hope it'll be enough to have it to a formal decision point for the board at the first March meeting. But again, you reserve the right, if it still needs some work, send us back to the drawing board. I do believe the application is either sometime late April or beginning of May. So that's kind of the timeline.
Questions for Mr. Weekly on this,
I got
please?
one question, which I'd like for you to find out tomorrow, in case I don't make it. Is if Shapiro fails to make his payments, what happens? Where do things go from there?
It's a very, very good question. I know we touched on a little bit at the last meeting.
That got answered, but I can't remember.
Yeah, but we need to get that, and quite.
If you would.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that. And I want to nail down more of that one-to-one, because I did have a citizen reach out about that, but I'm pretty sure that will be the agreement between Felix and DHCD. But I will get that, Mr. Chairman. If there are any other board members that have questions before this meeting tomorrow, be happy to ask those questions. If you think of them after this meeting tomorrow, send them to me, and I will nail down those questions.
We have questions now? All right, no questions now. They're going to email you. All right, anything else on that one? All right, let's talk about Meadows Lane.
Okay. At the last meeting, so just kind of set the table on this. I don't have my board report in front of me. I'm going to speak off memory. Before the last meeting, Mr. Bedeau, who's in the audience tonight, a resident along Meadows Lane in Madison County, had stated he would like to request VDOT to abandon a segment, not the whole Meadows Lane, but a segment of Meadows Lane, essentially where it would dead end prior to his property. The board asked Mr. Bedeau at the last meeting to please discuss with the neighbor and if they can put some type of agreement in place. Since that time, the chairman reached out to Mr. Wright, our attorney, to provide what we use on other, if it's more than 2 houses on a driveway, anything new, we generally work before zoning and all that's approved for the owners to work out a private road and maintenance agreement. So this kind of follows the spirit of that. That was given to Mr. Bedeau. He took that, I believe, put in the appropriate tax map parcels that's referenced, and has worked with his neighbor to actually even move further. Kim, if you move up the screen a little bit, has gotten that signed by the other party, and it has been notarized. Just for memory, Meadows Lane, if he's Mr. Bedeau's property, it pulls off Quaker Run there if you're up in that past Craigsville, like headed towards Syria. Go off Quaker Lane, make a left on Meadows Lane. It services Mr. Bedeau's property as well as the Dixons. I believe maybe another property of the Meadows who just, my apologies. The prior owner was the Meadows, so it just serviced Mr. Bedeau as well as the Dixons. As you can see, that signature does exist, Kim, please again, between the Dixons and Mr. Bedeau. Legal may have some comments on this. I know he has provided some guidance, so please, Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah, go.
I looked at it today. I think it's still missing a couple of key terms on it.
Could it be handled, I think, it seems like we're pretty close. This seems like a very inconsequential abandonment of a very short amount of road. I don't see any reason to delay this at this point. Could we make it contingent upon, so that we could get the notice to VDOT, could schedule a public hearing, we could go ahead and make this contingent upon your review of it?
Sure, and I'll just say, in terms of my review, the concerns are just making sure, one, it's not going to lead to problems down the road, really thinking future owners and if there's subdivisions and things like that, to make sure it just doesn't end up as being a mess for whoever, including the county and the county attorney. So.
All right, anybody have questions with this?
So is that one got Ms. Dixon's signature on the bottom of it?
Well, I think it's got one. I think that's the other issue is we're probably going to, I think both the Dixons are considered the property owners and both would need to sign, but anyways, yes,
So-
I've got comments and feedback for Mr. Bedeau and the Dixons.
Yeah, I've just got a question for Mr. Bedeau here.
Can you take him a Mike Federico, please? Thank you.
If we were to, I see it as, I'd be willing to approve this road maintenance agreement contingent upon having our county attorney's review and any possible amendments that he might come up with that you would look at and you and the Dixons sign, and signed by all affected property owners, and that it's contingent upon this getting recorded in the clerk's office. Is that amenable to you?
I guess we would have to talk about what legal says needs to be in there. I thought by the paragraph above the last one, that covered everybody forever.
I'm happy to. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think the issues is making sure, because I think, my understanding of the Dixon's properties, it's like 17 acres, pretty big.
Yes.
And so we got to make sure that if there's a subdivision, that those properties would also be covered. I think both Dixons need to sign it if they're both owners of the property. I'm trying to think what else I've got.
You've got,
I do.
the private road binding to heirs,
This is
Free to have a
probably
signature
not,
line.
this is just
Yeah,
in
that's
my
probably
idea of
not
what
gonna
needs to
be-
be clarified is
that'll-
exactly what we need by
That's a big one.
VDOT standards, right? Because, I mean, what the standard is for 64 is not going to be the same for what's needed on this one. I mean, it's just cleaning some things up. I don't think they're not ginormous changes.
The one that is on here is that you put some standards in place. We've referenced in the past for gravel roads and road maintenance agreements. What's the guide, Jonathan? There was a guide that we had at
I
one
think it's
time.
listed.
Private road and maintenance manual, which the Culpeper Water and Soil Conservation District put out, but they pulled from like Virginia Tech and other engineer resources to provide that.
And this gives us a little bit of a baseline and something that is a neighborly enforcement type of deal. What
Right.
else do you have, Hannon?
And also, I mean, using tax map parcel numbers is a good shorthand. I would just add in more of where it got recorded and by what deeds, just to make super certain everybody knows. And I
This-
understand that is with the easement. I saw
The
it.
second page is the recorded deed.
That's for the easement, is my understanding.
Right.
I'm saying for identifying the land and the owners, not
It
for
would-
the easement itself.
It would certainly appear to me that we are very, very close on this. And that if Mr. Beto and Hannon Wright talk for a couple minutes, get this thing knocked out, we can get this process rolling so we can move on. What else do you have, Carney?
Well, I saw that, I mean, I don't think it says in here that VDOT or the county will not be responsible for any maintenance in the future. We certainly don't want to have another Leathers Lane, so why wouldn't it say that?
I would think the only to counter that though is that if we officially abandon that section,
Yeah.
then the responsibility would not come back to VDOT or to the county. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay, so
All
the
right.
abandonment would take care of that.
So we've
Okay.
got a handful of very
Fine.
small matters to wrap this thing up, and we can go ahead and advertise and get this taken care of for the property owners down there. Does that seem realistic, Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation, which some of you just stated,
Yeah.
is have our attorney, Mr. Beto, work out the final language of that. If you would like, I can reach out to VDOT and maybe set this public hearing. I would either say try to do it before your, I don't know if we have enough time in March. I guess we can try to hit March. Please do not do it on the 8th. We've got,
Let's do it at the second meeting in March.
okay. I will reach out to Ms. Shepherd. That date is March 25th, and see if that's reasonable. How that works, there's an advertisement for the public hearing. If you would like to take action that night, then you would do so via resolution. So VDOT's going to give me the proposed abandonment is 0.37 of a mile or something. They'll do that. Hopefully, we can get a nice GIS or some map illustration of where that's at. And that way, everybody recognizes where that abandonment would be and where VDOT agrees to, yes, and the state maintenance will then be at that point. So I'm hearing
All right,
public hearing,
what-
March 25th.
Well, we're gonna do it officially. What would
Yeah.
you like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the private road maintenance agreement for Mr. Beto and the Dixons on tax map parcel 2143B, to convey the joint use of a private road to the owner of tax map 29-91, contingent upon the county attorney's review and possible amendments signed by all affected property owners and recorded in the clerk's office.
And that also includes the part going to VDOT requesting from the Board of Supervisors the abandonment of the road?
Yes, included the request.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that process.
Mr. Chairman.
Just
Yes,
in,
sir.
just in case Mr. Beto wants to leave. Hey, Mr. Beto, if you don't mind just sending me, if you want to send me what you've got in terms of like a Word version, I can do a track changes for you with suggestions, and then the Dixons can decide whether or not, to use those or not. Okay?
All right, anything else on this? All right, let's talk about the Parks and Rec Authority Committee appointment. They amended their bylaws at the meeting this previous Monday. It wasn't Monday, it was Thursday,
It was
wasn't
the
it?
20th.
Yeah,
This whole month
Thursday.
with the
There's a
snow has messed
snow.
everything up. Thursday. We went through the proper channels with Parks and Rec to amend their bylaws. They now have 9 members on there instead of the 8. The recommendation at this point is to put Brian Gordon on Parks and Rec board. Anybody else have anything on this? Please.
Did they do something about the ones that won't show up?
Yeah,
Put
we've
something in
addressed,
place?
yes.
I mean, like
And-
something like you have to be at so many meetings or you're off?
It's just,
Yes,
it's
it's
a
part of the bylaws,
Thank
and
you.
we're
Or it's
just
a PRA
adding the
member.
2 young ladies that just joined Parks and Rec that we appointed, 2 meetings ago, I guess. They seem very constructive, already are participating in events, have been at the meetings, they're ready to go in a positive influence. What would y'all like to do with Brian Gordon?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Brian Gordon as on the Parks and Rec Board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. New business, proclamation recognizing March as American Red Cross Month. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, and I feel like I'm gonna repeat, but from time to time, we'll have organizations or agencies reach out to us to bring awareness for whatever the cause or mission may be. So the Red Cross has reached out to us to ask the Madison County Board of Supervisors to proclaim, Kim, is it May? No, it's March 2025. It's down at the bottom now, therefore, to proclaim March 2025 as American Red Cross Month. Again, it's more for awareness, regardless of what your passion or nonprofit or whatever you're involved in, this is when it's reached out to us. So proclamation is pretty standard. Thank you, Kim, for kind of adding our flavor to it, if you will, at the top. But this is a proclamation. It doesn't engage or tie up any county funding. It's really something they can post on their page, and other counties to bring awareness to the work that the American Red Cross does.
What would y'all like to do on the declaring March as the American Red Cross Month?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we proclaim, issue the proclamation recognizing March as American Red Cross Month.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, discussion. Jonathan, tell us about rural rustic. It seems like we've strayed away from the facts on this for a while. Explain both sides, please.
Yeah, so Ms. Shepherd had one of their, I don't know if they're new or whatever their involvement is in the Rural Rustic Program now, reach out to me to talk about cost escalations, whether it's material, that being the asphalt or labor. Our existing 6-year plan, if we stayed with what we've seemed to do over the last several years, is we do more of a traditional pavement to rural rustic roads versus where the county kind of was introduced to this rural rustic back in probably 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. Really was about stretching the dollar and taking an unpaved road, which is what the secondary 6-year road program does, to a hard surface. That hard surface at that time was more of the chip and tar. So great dialogue. I took Mr. Gordon with me to kind of give him some exposure and to just talk about this program. And we got into the discussion, are these figures with pavement or chip and tar? So I went back to VDOT and said, hey, give me a table of our existing 6-year road plan and what that looks like. If it's 5 inches of base and 2 inches of asphalt, which is denoted, I don't know what you want to call that color, pink, light red, whatever. Then you have 4 inches of base, 1.5 inches of asphalt, that's in blue. And then what would 4 inches of base and then tar and gravel look like? You can see for each of the projects, there's a significant, thank you, Kim, that is needed for my eyes. You can see the difference in each road. So just stick with the first one there, Walker's Mill. If you said, let's do 5-inch base, 2-inch asphalt, $615,000. And it takes you, the program years are up at the top, so there's several years to achieve that bucket of money. If you did the same road with 4-inch base, 1.5-inch asphalt, $495,000. If you go back to what we did, I think Shiflett's Corner was an example of one of the ones we did tar and chip years ago. That brings that project, still hard surface, to 356,000. So significant difference. I guess the feedback I would look for the board, this isn't adopting a new 6-year secondary road plan. This is giving feedback to VDOT. So when they do your draft 6-year secondary road plan, which comes up in March or April of every year, you can kind of, through me, give some direction of what you would like to see your hard surfacing be, so they can put those numbers together for your draft secondary 6-year road plan that'll be coming up in about a month or two.
You have questions on this? I think this is great. We're taking a 6-year plan that is in actuality about an 18-year plan. And we're making the allotment of money allocated towards Madison County hopefully stretch farther. I'm glad you came back with this. I don't know how we strayed so far away from it. Probably because they don't want to be involved in anything but asphalt. But this is a good way to go, and when we go through the public process, maybe we can make the dollar stretch a little bit farther.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I would just add further that, you know, for some reason, if you look at it, you see the segment of road may be longer than others, and that doesn't mean there's more homes on it. I mean, we've seen farms just, you know, still be 2 places on the road. But if you see something specific, you say you want to go a different route for that specific road, you still reserve that right. I just thought it'd be imperative to mention to all members and not take assumptions that we all know about this, because I had kind of forgotten about it myself. And I'm like, wait a minute, we used to do tar and chip. So give me the direction, please, and I will communicate to VDOT so they can prepare your draft 6-year secondary road plan.
Y'all want to see some tar and gravel, base 4-inch tar and gravel from VDOT, some recommendations on this?
Yeah, and I got.
Please, what else you got?
Okay, it seems to me that rural rustic, they changed some of the rules so that we could also improve gravel roads. I mean, I think, Mr. Sharman, if I recall, you were talking about a
Parish road.
They got a big bump.
Yeah, that needed to be improved, but at the time, the rural rustic wouldn't do that, but now it does.
I'm not aware of rural rustic allowing that. We did have VDOT look at Parish Road, and what we got back from that.
Oh, I'm mistaken then.
No, they had, keep going.
So it was similar when we looked at Parish Road. We looked at, it was either River Road or Clore Road there at the end. I think it was Clore Road where it goes from paved to unpaved. And they look at traffic count, they look at road width, and they felt like it would not qualify for rural rustic. I do not know if the General Assembly passed. At one point, there was some legislation looking at, instead of using, 6-year funds specifically for taking a non-paved road to a hard surface road, to where the counties could assign some monies to say, hey, we want to put proper drainage in, or we want to widen this road. I'm not aware if that passed, but at this time, this would be just addressing hard surfaces that qualify. I think it has to be more than 50 vehicles per day. It's got to have a certain road width that qualifies for paved.
It may not be for parish, it may not be rural rustic, but VDOT at one point, ditching, which seems like common sense. Apparently, at some point with VDOT, that was impossible, I'm sure because of a lizard or something. But now they're ditching again, and they're doing it all over the county. So maybe that is an option. And then we could also talk about the bump out there that is problematic on Parish Road, and we know certainly probably has more than 50 trips on it a day. I can't see how it wouldn't. Are you also collecting a list of roads that
I have not yet. What I've done in the past, and please, if board members have any certain roads you wish to have them review, in the past, I've been doing it for some time, I'll reach out to law enforcement and our school division. They're usually the primary 2 agencies. I guess you can add EMS in there, but those 2 agencies that travel probably every road in the county at some point in time, to just give feedback, and that's kind of how I give a list. But if you have a list, I can say even going this route, if you add a road, just to fund and realize it would be, I mean, I heard the comment about 6 years to 18 years, but it definitely wouldn't fit within that 6-year plan. I know we've added, I think we added Emmett and maybe one more last year, but certainly with trying to do some reprogramming of the type of surface you use would keep you within the confines of your 6-year plan, but there would not be any other monies to cover a new road within the current draft plan that they will bring you. But I'm going to draft an email to Carrie before I leave the building tonight that asks about specific funding and program questions. If the General Assembly did pass where counties have more freedom with scoping their projects, such as putting in new drainage. We've talked about Turner Drive being an example, is another one of those roads. Can the county direct monies to widening roads and so forth? So I'll follow up with her and report back to the board.
Anybody else have anything on this?
I have a VDOT question.
Yeah, we're talking VDOT. Let's go. Not so much. Oh, keep going.
Mr. Weekly, there was a concern brought to me this past week by residents of Twyman's Mill Road on a particular stretch of the road, and actually it's near the Five Riders Farm Stand. There's a blind, sharp curve there. I think there's been several wrecks there, but some of the local residents asked me if there was a possibility about considering placing a lower speed limit. And I wouldn't say we're escalating this to a VDOT speed study, but perhaps, you could speak with the sheriff about it, or I could speak with the sheriff to get his take on it.
I definitely will speak to the sheriff first and foremost. I'll have to travel that.
Oh, so 55.
Yeah, I'll have to travel that road to see if they have any existing chevrons. Not all roads have the chevrons that indicate curves and changes, but I'll ride out there to see. We certainly can ask them for a safety review. When we asked for a speed study and safety review of Beautiful Run, that was one of the things they came back with was, well, we're not going to lower the speed, but there's some missing chevrons that we can add. So I will start with the sheriff, I'll ride the road myself, and I'll communicate to VDOT the safety concern. The other concern about that road, and because I live off the 15 corridor too, is when you have those awful accidents, they reroute the traffic through there. I've come up to where it's like, I better get in the ditch or this semi, because they tractor trailers coming down that road too, is going to take me out. So just normal travel is what I'm hearing you saying, but even when you're rerouting traffic due to those bad wrecks on 15, it's even more concerns. Yeah, I didn't want to bring that up. You did tell me that, but.
The night the banana truck ran up the tree, we had a tractor trailer come in, and there's a 90-degree turn in the middle of the farm. He took out a garage, part of a garage, couldn't make the turn, ended up off the bank, when you know how soft it was. My son had a terrible time trying to pull him back out, and then had to get his truck out of there for him. He couldn't back it up, so that's what happens on that stretch of roads.
And the people coming back to pick up the bananas that, yeah, it was ridiculous. That's a true story, but.
It's a good Madison County story. All right,
But I will follow up, Mr. Jewett.
That's a bad road. Twyman's Mill is, when you
Yeah.
first got to get off of it, it's like this, and it goes like this, and you have to be really, really alert on that road.
Anything on rural rustic or VDOT or anything else? All right, Mr. Weekly, we've got. I'm taking it. Joint Comprehensive Plan meeting. That'll be on what is it? The next
March 5th, your joint meeting. So you have 2 cases. If you choose to get through those quickly, you can. It's up to you. And then you'll have your comprehensive plan review jointly with the Planning Commission.
And tomorrow or on Thursday at 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock, we have our first budget meeting.
That is correct, sir.
Oh yeah.
And just so folks know what's on the menu, we'll discuss goals and priorities for FY26 that the board would like to see, and then the school board will be here with their budget. So that's what's on Thursday's agenda.
Anybody?
Starts at 3. This room.
Please come. Open to the public, by all means. Anybody else have anything on either of those 2 items? All right, back to public comment. Back to public comment. Any public comment? Anything online? Come on up, Mr. Kirby, please. I apologize.
You've been talking about safety and stuff just now. Is it possible to have the sheriff's office or the emergency medical or emergency management folks start posting something on their Facebook? I mean, between traffic accidents, trees down, high water, people are rerouting and stuff only through citizens posting on Madison Bulletin or Times. ever seem to really know what's going on out there in bad weather especially until you come up on it. So it'd be really helpful if they would use their social media to let us know what's going on in terms of road closures and accidents and, hey, stay away from this area. And, you know, people self-routing, maybe if there was a little more information, people could avoid some of the detours and truly route way out and around them. So. And one other thing on the reassessment, I mean, what Brian had out on the GIS was fantastic. The prior year or assessment and this one, in terms of the amount of data that's there, I found the amount of information lacking in terms of what do these things mean. One of them is an adjustment factor on your house value. And just quick scan in our neighborhood area, I found adjustment factor from a 1 to a 1.6. What's it mean? Now, I mean, if everybody in the county wants to know what those codes mean or have some idea of how they were generated or how they came up with them, that's thousands of people coming to talk to these assessors, where it seems like they can provide some sort of a document that at least tells us, hey, here's the code, here's what it means. If possible, they can explain how it's derived or how they make some determinations. But, I mean, because there's a lot of forms and stuff out there that information's on the front, you flip it over, and they tell you what all these codes mean. That's not there. And it would really be helpful, because I'm gonna have to schedule an appointment with them just simply to come in and find out, how'd you come up with this? Because I look at the parcel right next door or 2 doors down, you know, same age or whatever, but yet these factors are significantly different. You know, so what's it really mean? So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? All right, thank you all. No closed session, what would you like to do?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you all.
Thank you.